AM Weekly starting right now, bringing emergency managers from around the world together to learn, share and collaborate.
Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are at in this great nation. I am excited today to have a couple of my friends from, well, I guess Dan's always on here, but a couple people from the Executive Academy. And we'll start with Dan. Dan, come on in.
Hey, good morning.
I was introduced to you like
good afternoon.
I
guess you say good morning, good afternoon to where you're at. So good morning to you, good afternoon to everybody else.
I was introduced to you like you've never been on the show before. Like this.
Well, I mean, I'm used to not being counted. It's fine.
So anyway, we have Jesse with us. Dr. Jesse Spearo is with us today, and he not only is he an emergency manager at an airport, which we're really going to be discussing, he's also a fellow Executive Academy grad from our cohort. So Jesse, welcome to the show.
Hey, good morning, guys. Great to be here. Appreciate the invite. Oh, and Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year. Happy New Year.
Before we get started, I want to just, for all the listeners out there, and then for the viewers, Todd is very proud that he reorganized the back of his backdrop there. So if you're watching, just take note of that. And if you're listening, Todd reorganized the backdrop, and he's very excited about it. He's very happy about it. He's very proud. Take a note or something like that, and, reach out to him, let him know how proud you are of him.
I literally almost just spit out my coffee on that one. That would have been terrible. That would have been a bad case here. So, well, we're not here to talk about the background. Yes, to do some reorganizing, but we're here to talk about aviation emergency management, specifically at airports, and some of the challenges that come from that. And so, Jesse, Dan, and I, we all went to the Executive Academy together, like I said before, and that's where we met. Got to really get to know Jesse a lot, and very, very, very talented emergency manager across the board. But we're happy to have him here to talk about aviation emergency management. So, Jess, how did you get involved with aviation emergency management?
Oh, that's a great question. I actually had no intention of getting into the transportation sector as an emergency manager, but I was looking for something different. I was looking to actually transition into something new that was a little bit different. So when I was leaving, I had a bunch of job applications out for positions and was fortunate enough to get lots of job offers. And the one that was really interesting to me was actually the one for the Fort Lauderdale Hollywood International Airport. And I was kind of turned on to that position by some of my colleagues in Southeast Florida, which I worked at for a number of years in Southeast Florida as an emergency manager. And they said, hey, Jesse, great opportunity. You can build the program up here at FLL. They need some help, program management, new direction. You'd be a real asset, not only for the airport, but for us in Southeast Florida. And I said, yeah, I don't know anything about airports. They says, well, it's all about project management anyway. You're an emergency manager, so you can be an emergency manager anywhere. So I said, okay, I'll go ahead and give it a try. And then I did a bunch of research on it, on aviation and transportation sector, and I found it extremely fascinating. And I remember sitting in my job interview with the deputy director of the airport and the director of operations. And they asked me, Jesse, what do you know about airports? And I said, guys, I got to be honest. I know nothing about airports. What I do know about airports, I learned by watching Die Hard 2. And they laughed about that. And then they said, this is the guy for us. And so, that's the history.
So speaking of Die Hard 2, before you got to this job, they had an event, a significant event there at the airport. Can you discuss a little bit of the lessons learned from that and why they moved to emergency management?
Yeah, so on January 5th, 2017, so this is 5 years ago, we just passed that 5-year anniversary. We had an airport shooting. We had an individual get off an aircraft, went and got his check bags. He took his check bags into the bathroom, and then he proceeded to load up a firearm and then walked out into the baggage claim area and shot about a dozen people, killing a half dozen or so. Very tragic event that occurred. It was luckily enough, it was over very quickly. Within 30 seconds, law enforcement was there. They detained the individual and has since been prosecuted since then. But they realized with that incident, as well as other cascading events that we've been seeing in Southeast Florida, that emergency management really needs to be here at the airport to help support our preparedness, our response, recovery, mitigation efforts. So they had the foresight to develop an emergency management program with 3 FTEs and a budget and a lot of responsibilities. And during that time, there was a team that was there before, and they were there for I think 3 years, and then they transitioned to other opportunities, and then I was brought in and was fortunate enough to be lined up with some other really, really good people. I work with Aisha Lindsay. She's actually from airport operations, working communications. She's excellent. And also Kevin Wu, he's the airport manager of emergency management. He spent nearly 2 decades in air operations, including as the airside operations manager at the airport. So he's extremely knowledgeable. So we all complement each other very, very well. And that's what good emergency management programs and teams have, is a good complement of practitioners.
Absolutely.
Well, you made a great comment, actually, and I want to touch on that comment, and then I want to ask you to justify it. Kind of throwing you under the bus a little bit, but you said you're an emergency manager. You can be an emergency manager anywhere, and I think that's an amazing comment. I think it's very accurate. But I would like you to justify that comment for our audience.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a good follow-up. I appreciate that. So as an emergency manager, we're really project managers when it comes down to it. And we're project managers in public safety. And we're jack of all trades in many, many aspects. If you just look at the mission areas, from prevention, preparedness, mitigation, response, recovery, you can be an expert in any one of those, but it's very difficult to be an expert in all of them. In addition, there's so many other facets within that in which you can be very talented and skilled in, as well as be talented and skilled in other areas in prevention and in mitigation and recovery. So as an emergency manager, we spend a lot of time developing or sharpening our knives and tools that are in our toolbox. So from our education, our training and experience, as you build those up over time, you become very confident within those spaces. And if you don't have the answers, you know who has the answers, because you've been a leader in the industry, you've networked, you've built relationships, you've communicated effectively, and then you know people and people know you, and that's how you can really bring together a good team. So you can take an emergency manager out of a cushy job wherever. You can put them in a briar patch out in the middle of nowhere in some prairie jurisdiction, and they're going to find good successes with there. And they may go there and implement some good policies and practice and implement things that the jurisdiction may never have thought of before, because they're coming in with an outside perspective. And that's how they can be successful. And I think that my success and the success of our team is, we've done a lot of observation from the outside as air operations occurs, as everything happens at a very busy airport. And then we know when to step in and say, hey, these are some areas we should consider doing. Would this be something that could get implemented, or has this been brought up before? Hey, there's some new research, some new data, some new information, some new practices. Let us try some things and get back to you. And luckily, we've had a really good administration and management that supported that. And that's how we've been able to find success. So to your point, Dan, you build up those tools in the toolbox, you can really go anywhere.
That's a fantastic explanation, and I want to just elaborate a little bit too, because networking is a huge part of emergency management, and we are huge networkers in emergency management, but we are large at influencing, and ultimately we are collectors. We are collectors of people. We are collectors of information. Mm-hmm. I've been accused of collecting mentors, so I invite Todd to go. That's on the show. So we are collectors, and we collect information, we collect skills, and we become very competent in emergency management, so we can apply it anywhere. And I'd like to touch on one of the comments that are out there by John Ryan, who says it's all about relationships, and emergency management truly is all about relationships. It's about networking, it's about influence, and about leadership. And you nailed it. And I just wanted to touch on that.
So follow up on that, Jesse. What are the challenges that you have at the airport not operations necessarily, but at airport emergency management compared to emergency management out on the street?
Well, how much time do we have today? So I don't want to run over. So great question with that, Todd. So aviation emergency management is pretty unique, but in context, in totality, It's really just the same as being a municipal emergency manager or a county emergency manager. So you just kind of step into a different space and then you apply applicable practices and actions to make that space safe and resilient. So, for example, when I was a municipal emergency manager and a county emergency manager, we had to do mitigation plans. We had to do the comprehensive emergency management plan. We had to do various XYZs based off of statutes, mandates, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we don't have those things that you typically see for a county or municipal jurisdiction. What we have is we have a lot of federal regulations and statutes that we have to follow. So the FAA, Federal Aviation Administration, is really like the FEMA for what it is that dictates how we operate our program for the airport in general, for operations. But in particular with that, we have what's known as the 139 standard, in which it has to do with our airport emergency plan. So the airport emergency plan is much akin to what a comprehensive emergency management plan is for a county or for a city, so that EOP. But at this level, it tells you very specifically in the 9 chapters what needs to be written. How do you address physical security, security threats? How do you address severe weather? How do you address cyber, aviation crashes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's in there, and we have to follow very specific guidelines. So as long as we meet those guidelines, we're going to be compliant. And as long as we're compliant, we get that ticket to operate that airport. And that's very important that we do that. But in addition to that, we do have a lot of other plans that we utilize to help support our operations at the airport. So for example, some of the other plans that we have a security plan, we have a stranded passenger plan, a reconstitution plan, which is a lot like a recovery plan, because a big emphasis of airports is to ensure that you can keep it operating all the time, because it is a critical infrastructure piece. It also generates a lot of money by the travelers, passengers, and cargo that go through that, and it employs a lot of people. So our airport itself has an economic impact of approximately $40 billion a year. So that's a lot of money to Southeast Florida. But a couple other plans we have: EOC operations manual, hurricane plans, crisis communication, communicable disease. But if you take Broward County Aviation Department away from that, you can write in Des Moines, Iowa, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, LA on the top of that, and it applies just the same.
Absolutely. And we're gonna take a quick break, but when we come back, I want to talk about like the jurisdiction that you have.
Sure.
Hey, welcome back from that quick break, and do appreciate that. And yeah, check out AEMO's stuff that they're doing. They're doing some really exciting stuff. And Leslie Luke is a great guy, very, very talented emergency manager, and you learn a lot from them. Let's bring everybody back into the show. So, so the other day, I don't know if you guys saw it or not, but up in LA in Pacoima, a Cessna crash landed on a train track, and they got the guy out, the pilot, out of the plane, and it's like a movie. Just after they got the guy out of the plane, a train came and hit the plane. I was like, talk about transportation emergency. You know, you get trains, planes, and I guess maybe you can add an automobile on that too as well. Yep. But do you guys work on those as well? Like if it's within, like, how far out does a plane crash impact airport operations?
That's a really good question. And to answer it a little bit more finitely is it depends if it's inbound or outbound, and it depends where it ends up. So ultimately, at the end of the day, the responsibility of that aviation incident is on the air carrier. So they have federal statutes, mandates, laws that dictate their responsibility for that. So, but ultimately what happens in a lot of circumstances is the aviation authority is not responsible. They end up carrying a lot of that load to help support those air carriers, family assistance, family reception, reunification, crisis communication, providing the space information intelligence. So there's a lot that we would do to support that. And we call that in aviation that's known as an Alert 3 incident. So an Alert 3 is an aviation crash, either inbound or outbound. If a aircraft crashes on airport property, then that would be the responsibility of the EM team that's here and our mutual aid partners that would come to help assist in that operation. So you have command and control, public information and warning. You're going to have probably a lot of other transportation entities to support that, because it's going to have clogged roadways. We're going to have to close the airport. Not close the airport, but we're going to have to divert their air traffic to other airports. So there's a lot of components to that. And how we in emergency management, we work, and this analogy has been used quite a number of times, including by myself, is in emergency management, we're a lot like conductors of an orchestra. There's all these players that are coming with these great tools, utensils, whether it be a horn or a cymbal or a kazoo, but also it's a fire engine, it's a law enforcement officer, it's public works, it's transportation, it's public health. So we're there to help bring some harmony to that incident response to ensure that we can effectively and efficiently respond to that and reduce the overall impact to not only the people, but the responders in the community itself.
As a conductor, though, we want more cowbell. More cowbell.
Yeah, I need to play the cowbell, play the kazoo, and then I think we're going to be okay.
I wanted to touch on something that relates to responding to an incident that before we went live, you had touched on, and I would like for the audience to be able to hear about the differences and the way ICS is implemented in aviation.
Mm-hmm. Sure. So ICS is great. I love it. I've been a purist for all of my professional life. What's great about ICS is you can also apply it to anything, and it's malleable. It's flexible. It's based off of the entity, the jurisdiction that would apply these concepts in particular. So in aviation emergency management, we have most, at least at our airport, we have most of those ICS positions that you find on the FLOP. So your command and general staff, those are mostly the same, but we do have other components to that, other positions. Like we have a tenant officer, which deals with the tenants at the airport. We have a air carrier. We have a welfare officer. Welfare officer is kind of like a command staff position, but they're responsible for the welfare of the employees there at the airport if an incident were to occur. We also have some pretty unique things that don't really work in ICS with our particular operation. And that has to do with like a planning chief. Like we have the position that's there, but it's really not your traditional planning chief functions that are undertaken. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to make some adjustments to that position description as planning section chief. And it's really more of a reconstitution chief. So we don't do the IAPs and the situation reports and all those things, documentation that you typically see within a planning section. That planning chief doesn't do that. Who does do that is the new position that we added when I came along, which is the EOC manager position for an activation. So that position is actually doing a lot of those functions because in EM, we're trained in the ICS. We're trained in NIMS. We've applied it before. So we're going to be more efficient and effective at doing that during an incident or an event. And we like to have that position that was the planning chief, which is another administrative officer within the agency, to actually concentrate on that reconstitution of the airport, getting it started, looking to make sure our capital projects, if that's going to impact that long term, how is it going to impact XYZ, so they can focus on those operations and long term circumstances rather than the ICS component.
Quick question, just on that are you guys are looking at 24 operation, right? I mean, when it comes to like an emergency or is it, or are you looking at 24-hour operations? Like, obviously if we have like out here wildland fires, we're on these fires for weeks at a time. Something that happens at the airport is probably a finite time box, right?
Yeah, typically that's true. And with the incidents, I've been there for 2.5 years or so, and 2 years of that's been COVID.
COVID
But
aside,
for most circumstances, we're going to be dealing with something that's going to last for a few hours, perhaps a few days, maybe a week, like the active assailant. But still, they were able to reconstitute the airport. So Dan and Todd, you guys have both been deployed, responded to disasters. Your first operation or first couple operation periods, you're working 24 hours just because you got to get stuff done. But we have it set up where we have an Alpha and Bravo shift. We have people that are staffed and trained on various components, and we keep continually implementing more training, more opportunities, more plans and procedures to help them in the Bravo shift and the Alpha shift for serving their roles in an EOC.
So you touched on too when it comes to responding to incidents and how you have different plans that would do different things, whether it be housing somebody or transport. How do you guys handle family care or family assistance when it comes to emergency situations?
Yeah, and the airport, we've had some experience in that. So we've had a couple of incidents that have occurred, whether that be the shooting. There was also a FedEx crash that happened a number of years ago. No fatalities with that. We also had another air crash. We actually had an aircraft that was taxiing to take off, and a pilot behind them called up. This is a flight to, I believe, Brazil, was leaving, and called up on the radio and said, "Hey, you're leaking something out of the back of one of your wing caps." And all of a sudden, it started on fire, burst into flames. They had to evacuate the aircraft. I think there was over 100 or so passengers that were on it. There was a couple of injuries associated with it, but we had really great response from our airport rescue firefighters. Our ARF personnel responded very quickly and were able to contain the incident and evacuate the people, personnel, passengers that were there. But ultimately what happened, the air operations was not the airline, which is a South American airline, was not very successful in helping to support that family assistance component. And that's, as I said earlier, that's where the airport authority comes in there to help to assist and bridge that gap for them. And ultimately, they ensured that there was appropriate hotel accommodations were made, that communication was made, that they were able to get food to help them. They were able to provide translators to help support them while they end up staying there. I think they end up staying in the States for at least another 2 or 3 days afterwards before they can get on a flight and get back. But another thing I did want to touch on is the airline industry has some really good emergency response and business continuity teams that are out there. All your major airlines have those programs, and most of the other smaller carriers and regional carriers also have personnel that are trained in that. They all come together and support each other in a way that I have never seen before. It's just like two neighboring jurisdictions that have been impacted pretty hard, or one very hard by an incident, another one hasn't. How those responders go and support them with mutual aid. The airline industry does that as well. And they're very dedicated to helping ensure the safety and support of that air carrier, their personnel, those passengers that have been impacted, the family members in which they've either had family or friends be injured or killed in that. It's really quite striking. And there's also a lot of good private sector companies that are out there that help support those operations as well. I have a good friend of mine, an aviation emergency manager by the name of Barb Webster. She works for a group called Go Crisis. They do these types of services to help support family assistance and operations and everything that has to do when these incidents do occur. So my hat's off to them.
I just have a real quick question before we start to wrap up, because I know we want to talk about those books that you had mentioned prior, but we are finding more and more that more organizations are applying emergency management, hiring emergency management professionals. And we're seeing that, you have in the aviation as far as the whole airport. But how well do you work? How well are you finding that other individual airlines are either hiring emergency management professionals, and how do you work with them when incidents take place?
We work very closely. We have the Florida Airports Council (FAC). We also have the American Association of Airport Executives. We have emergency management working groups. We work extremely close with one another. We support each other with our operations, with our exercises, with our incidents. Just a couple months on the job, when I started back in 2019, I went to the American Association of Airport Executives Emergency Management Conference. It was up in Chicago in the summer. And there was 250 or so attendees, and these people blew my socks away as to how dedicated they were. A lot of them were actually not full-time emergency managers. They were ODA, other duties as assigned in emergency management, but their dedication, their work in aviation blew me away. And it was one of the best conferences I've ever attended in my life. And I've thrown all my weight behind supporting that and our other partners and carriers that are out there, because we're all one team. And I think that's what makes this transportation sector very unique to work in.
Absolutely. A couple of comments. Jesse, you are an idol. That's Aisha Lindsay. She says, Dr. Spearo, you are such an idol, and we are so honored to have you in Florida, FLL. That's awesome. That's a great comment right there. I just wanted to point that out. Well, a couple things here. So you talked about working with the airport. You talked about working with the airlines. And when we have air transportation hiccups, right? For instance, a lot of the planes were canceled because of COVID. We have just the other day a full stop of aviation flights due to North Korea missile test. How does that impact what you do on the airport operations side? And do you have plans to deal with people that are stuck at the airport because of things like this?
Yeah, we have a stranded passenger plan. We've actually implemented in the past with various other incidents that have occurred. We have impact from tropical events, hurricanes, etc. And people get stuck at the airport, so we have to be able to support them. So we do have plans in place. We do have kits in which we call comfort kits that we give out to them, kind of like what you see in a shelter. It's got toothbrush and some things and toiletries. You provide some foods, some water to them as necessary. So we do have those plans in place, and it's kind of just like another jurisdiction that would have an emergency occur, and they provide that assistance to them. Ultimately, we want them to be comfortable. We want them to have that experience at least be tolerable, so that we can get them back to where they're going and reunite them with their friends and family.
That's awesome. I mean, I got stuck at the airport due to COVID, and I'd say American Airlines, as much as people want to complain about airlines, they did a great job of putting us up in hotels and whatnot. But I can just imagine what it's like during weather when everybody's stuck, not just one airplane, and what you guys have to deal with that. I know that's some people's flight nightmares. Hey, well, we're getting here to the end, and I know we talked about this before, and the question that we ask here now, and we're picking it back up, by the way. And just a big announcement. We are bringing in at the end of the month. We have the book of the month that we're going to be doing. We have we'll do more announcement on him. Mark is coming in to help out with this, and he's going to be doing reviews. And so we're bringing back that question to all of our participants here. What books or publications are you reading? So Jess, I know you wanted to have a couple of you had that pre-planned now because what book you're reading right now, and what do you recommend?
For me, well, I'm actually reading a pretty good book. I got actually right here on my desk. It's called Incident Command Tales from the Hot Seat, and it talks about incident ICS as it's applied to different incidents in different agencies, really across the world, Europe in particular. That one's very interesting. So, but I'm also a professor at 3 really great institutions as well, and I always tell my students that you have to be disaster historians. You have to learn about those emergencies and disasters of the past, because that is going to shape your ability to be more effective in the future if something like that were to occur. Mm-hmm. But there's 3 texts I'll provide you real quick that I recommend as reads, and they're historical in their account that it's disasters from way back in the day. So the first one is called Storm of the Century by Willie Dyer. It's about the 1934 Labor Day hurricane that impacted the Florida Keys, one of the most powerful hurricanes to ever strike the United States. A really interesting account on how it impacted the World War I veterans that were working on the overseas highway. It's a tragic story, but a really good read. The second one is called Under a Flaming Sky by Daniel Brown. It's about the Great Hinckley Fire from 1894 in Minnesota. It ravaged Minnesota, and there was reports of walls of fire being over 200 feet high, and it killed hundreds of people and burned thousands of acres. So that's a really good account. And the last one, especially this time of year, now that we're in winter, it's called The Children's Blizzard by David Larkin. It's about the 1888 winter storm that passed through the Great Plains and the Midwest, and it dumped about 3 feet of snow, and the temperatures dropped 50 degrees in just about 2 hours. 500 people were frozen to death in their homes and outside, caught in it. And it talks about this school in which the school teacher had to try to figure out what she was going to do to help those kids to be safe from that storm. Really a harrowing account from an older disaster. I highly recommend it.
Wow, that's a great book, and I'm looking forward to look at that one. That's one I haven't heard of before, so I'm definitely going to have to check that out. Jesse, thank you so much for spending time with us this morning. I know that you have a lot going on over there in Florida. Stay warm. I know it gets chilly down there, doesn't it? All right, everybody. Thank you so much for spending time with us this morning. Dan, as always, it's great seeing you, and what's going on. And do you have any parting words before we let everybody go?
Yeah, I mean, look up Jesse, connect with him online, but also look up Leaders Cafe. Check us out. Go sign up to be a member of Leaders Cafe, where you can have more access to us. You can learn about leadership. You can understand where leadership training is going to be held. Get some leadership training from us as well, and then connect with other aspiring leaders and emergency management professionals.
Absolutely, and don't forget to check out that the webinar that the aspiring emergency managers online are putting on. And we'll put more information about that out there. And if you guys have any books or anything that you guys are interested in, let us know about it, because we do have our in-house book editor now, and we'll more about Mark in the future here. But we'll wait till Thursday, the last Thursday of this month, and we'll get more information, and you guys will enjoy talking with him. All right, everybody, thank you again for spending time with us here at EM Weekly, and don't forget, please follow us on your favorite podcast player. And you know what? Actually, go to iTunes, if you will, and give us a nice review. Love to have 5 stars. That would be awesome. Helps us out, and helps Dan with his hairline, because mine's already gone, and we're trying to save Dan's hairline. And so if you can give us 5 stars, it'll save Dan's hair. Mine's already gone, so it's too late. And love y'all. Take care. Stay safe and stay hydrated.